So good to be with you guys. I was thinking this morning what blessing it is to celebrate another year alive by being with the Central family and sharing with you a word I really feel like God has put on my heart for today. You know, I was thinking this last week just how crazy the idea of dreams are. Just dreams in general, because dreams can fit into different categories. You have your inspirational dreams that like inspire, they motivate. You've got dreams that are helpful. These are more of your prophetic dreams. But then you have dreams that are just downright weird. Like, where did that come from? Why did I even dream that? I had one of those moments this last week. I had dreamt that we had our fourth baby. And I woke up in a panic, in a sweat. I'm a brand new baby girl, by the way. 4 girls would have been the scenario at that point. And we have 3 girls. We're good. We don't need another baby. And in my dream, my wife, Laura, was furious with me. Like, she was so mad, as if it was all my fault. And I remember waking up, and the whole next day, I just walked around on eggshells around Laura because I just had in my head that she was still upset with me, all because of a dream. Does anybody else do this? Maybe you've been mad at somebody all day because of something they did to you in a dream. They're like, what'd I do? I don't even know what I did. There's the famous dreams. Anybody ever dream of falling? Like, you have the falling dream, or the dream of showing up to work in your pajamas, or maybe something worse. I was thinking the next generation, they're not gonna have this dream. It's not gonna be such a bad dream for them, because every time I drop my kids off at school, all the kids have shown up to school in their pajamas, in slippers and Crocs, like no effort. They're living the dream right now. But you have your nonsense dreams. Dreams can be nonsense, but dreams can also be powerful. I mean, just think about phrases like the American dream, or that girl right there, she's my dream girl. You have inspiration that we draw from great speeches like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, which his dream wasn't just words, it was this bold vision of justice, equality, unity. And it continues to shape our world today. His dream, it inspired action. It called people to work towards something greater than themselves. And what makes inspirational dreams so impactful is that they're not just about what could be, they're about what should be. So I think it's appropriate this weekend, as we honor Dr. King's legacy, that we're reminded that bold dreams combined with faithful action, that has the power to change lives. And today we're gonna be looking at a dream in the Bible that did just that. It wasn't just a vision of the future. It was a message from God that saved an entire nation. In fact, it saved generations of people to come. And here's the crazy part, is that God sent that message, he sent that dream through a man who started his journey in a prison cell. Now, over the last 2 weeks, Pastor Judd's done an incredible job of leading us and kicking off this series, Fresh Start, where we've been unpacking what we can learn from the Bible with some time-tested principles and getting our own fresh start, especially when it comes to the area of finances. Principles that the Bible teaches about spending, that it teaches about our outlook on money. And it's been a great start to the year on how we can invite God into our lives and his intervention, how we can use and release his transforming power, because he is the God of the fresh start. And today, when it comes to finances, we're gonna be focusing on the principle. We're gonna be focusing on the practice of saving. And to do so, we're gonna learn from the biblical character named Joseph. And we're gonna see that Joseph, he's not just this dream interpreter, which we'll come to find out, but he's also, in a way, he's the Bible's first CFO. I mean, seriously, he is the chief financial officer for the greatest nation, the greatest country in the world at this time. And it's important to understand that Joseph's journey, it didn't start in this position of power. It didn't start in the palace. His journey actually started in a pit. Joseph's life was full of hardship. It was full of injustice. He was sold into captivity from his brothers who were jealous of him. He was taken to Egypt. He was a servant in the house of a man named Potiphar. And just when it seemed like things were looking up for Joseph, well, then he was falsely accused of something that he didn't do, and he was thrown right back into prison. And it seemed like every time Joseph caught a break, life knocked him right back down. Anybody else be able to relate with that just a little bit? Like every time we get a break, life just knocks us right back down. Here's the incredible part, is that God was with Joseph through it all. That even when Joseph was betrayed and in prison, God gave him favor. In Potiphar's house, he rose to a position of trust. In prison, he was put in charge of all the other prisoners. And eventually, when Pharaoh needed help, God's favor positioned Joseph to interpret the dreams that no one else could understand. And his faithfulness reminds us that even when life feels so unfair, it feels so hopeless, God, he is still at work behind the scenes. And he's working to prepare us for something greater. I know I do this often. I look at my own circumstances, I look at my own situations, and I just seem to think, where's God in this? You ever do that? Life seems unfair. God, where are you? Well, Joseph's story shows us that God's hand is in every season of our lives, even the hard one. So lots to learn from Joseph's story. But the part of his story I want to look at today starts with Joseph in prison. And it's there that he earned the reputation as someone who could interpret dreams with God's help. And his interpretations were so accurate that when Pharaoh, the most powerful man in all of Egypt, when he had two really disturbing dreams, well, Joseph was called in to help. Now, Pharaoh's first dream was about these 7 fat, healthy cows that were being eaten by. They were being devoured by these 7 thin, sickly cows. It kind of sounds like a dark Chick-fil-A commercial, doesn't it? His second dream was similar. It was these 7 plump heads of grain that were being were being eaten by 7 thin, scorched heads of grain. And no one in Pharaoh's court could figure out what these dreams meant. But Joseph stepped in. He stepped forward, and giving all credit to God, he explained the dreams to Pharaoh. He said, these dreams, these are warnings from God, Pharaoh. They're not just craziness, and they're not just random. These are warnings. The 7 fat cows, the 7 plump heads of grain, well, those are going to represent 7 years of great abundance. But the 7 thin cows, the 7 scorched heads of grain, they're going to represent 7 years of a severe famine that's going to follow. And the abundance will be so great, but the famine so severe that the people are going to forget about the good years entirely. And then he goes on to give Pharaoh some advice. He gives him a solution that we're going to look at in just a second. But before we do, I want us to realize that Pharaoh in this moment, he's so impressed with Joseph's dream interpretation, impressed with his wisdom. Look at what he tells Joseph in Genesis 41. He says this, it says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or what? Wise as you are. So you will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours. So Joseph was put in charge of the whole nation, second in command to the ruler of Egypt. He went from being a prisoner to potentially rescuing an entire nation. And today we're going to look at the saving principles that Joseph modeled, how they can give us a fresh start, not just in our finances, but also in our faith. And before we do, though, I just want to get real with you for a second, because this whole idea of saving money, building up a savings, I think a lot of us in the room, we face some real challenges in this area. We face some challenges. I read a recent survey that said almost half of all Americans, 50% of America, has less than $500 in a savings account. Which, if that were true, that would represent about half this room. And it's easy to understand with the rising cost of everything, rising cost of rent, rising cost of gas, rising cost of food, it presents challenges. It makes it hard to build up a savings. And then on top of that, we don't exactly live in a culture that supports the idea of savings. We live in a hyper-consumerism culture, right? In a hyper-consumerism world. We live in a buy now, pay it later culture where everything we buy, checkout carts, you go to any checkout cart these days, it asks you, do you want to split this into 4 easy payments? I'm like, I'm buying $20 sweatpants, 4 payments of $5? Like, maybe that does sound better than just spending $20 right now. Or our Instagram feeds, they're flooded with things we have to buy right now before it's out of stock. I must be the luckiest guy in the world because every time I just look at something, right below it, when I look at the price, it says 1 left in stock. Like, how am I always the one finding the 1 left in stock? With all these financial pressures we face, the idea of waiting, planning, saving can feel outdated. It can feel impossible. Maybe there's some of us in the room that saving just feels unnecessary. Maybe it's been all sunshine. Things are great. I mean, why save for a rainy day when there's not a cloud in the sky? I think there's some in the room that maybe you've been saving. Maybe you're doing fine, and you might be tempted to tune me out for the next 20 minutes, but I hope you won't, because Joseph's story reminds us that life seasons are unpredictable. Saving isn't just about preparing for what's next. It's about trusting God with what we have right now. And I think that's a message for everybody. So let's dive in. Let's look at Joseph's first principle of saving. And his first principle is to save for what's coming. Save for what's coming. Has anybody ever daydreamed about what they would do if they won the lottery? Like where you would go, what you would buy, the lavish lifestyle you may or may not have? My friends and I, we like to do this. We sit around and talk, and we'll say things like, we won the lottery, we'd buy all the houses in a neighborhood. We'd buy a whole neighborhood. I'd move all of you guys in, all my friends, all my family, pay off all your debt. Then we'd buy tanks and helicopters and race them around because we can now. There was this social media trend that started with, if I won the lottery, I wouldn't tell anyone, but there would be signs. And I want to show you a few of the signs that people posted. This one here, like, my toilets would be made of gold. The luxury bathroom experience. This one here, like a whole fridge full of cheese. Like that is a serious love for cheese. This last one I think we can relate with. A shopping cart full of groceries, a full tank of gas. I don't ask for much. That's what I do with my lottery winnings. And while dreaming about hitting the lottery can be fun, what Joseph's story, what it reminds us is that life, it doesn't always bring us unexpected blessings. It also brings us unexpected challenges. And that's why saving for what's coming is so important. God had showed Joseph a literal famine was just around the corner, but then he gives some advice to share with Pharaoh. We see it in verse 34. He says this, then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land. He should let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. And then do what? Store it. Store it away. And not just store it away, guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Because otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. Joseph, his advice to Pharaoh, it wasn't just about surviving the famine. His advice was about looking ahead and recognizing that the good years wouldn't last forever. And I think Joseph understood something that we often forget. And that is that the season that we're in right now won't always be the season that we're in. And for you, that could be good news or that could be bad news. But that truth applies to every part of life, especially when it comes to our finances. I mean, life is full of cycles. You have seasons that are full of abundance where everything seems like it's going right. And then you have seasons where challenges just start hitting you out of nowhere. And maybe you face some of these challenges. It's an unexpected medical bill. It's a surprise car repair. Maybe it's a sudden change at work. When things are going well, it's easy to believe that they're going to stay that way forever, but the wisdom that Joseph modeled is clear. Don't live like the good times will last forever. Be ready for what's coming because seasons will change. And that's why saving is so important, is that it creates breathing room for the unexpected. It prepares us for what might be next, for what might be ahead. And Joseph understood this. Like I said earlier, his decision to store up during the 7 good years, it wasn't just about surviving the famine. We're gonna see that it actually allowed Egypt to thrive through the famine, which shows us that the practice or discipline of saving, it isn't just about handling emergencies that come our way. It's also being ready for opportunities. I mean, when we have opportunities like a raise at work, we have a bonus, we have an unexpected financial breakthrough. Yes, these are reasons to celebrate. But the reasons that we should celebrate is because we now have new opportunities to plan for what God might be calling us toward. So your current season, it won't last forever. If you're struggling right now, I want to encourage you, hold on. Hold on to the promise that God will give you what you need. Pray that he will help you completely rely on his provision. God is working even when we can't see it. If you don't believe me, just open up your Bible. You're gonna see story after story where God had people who had very little, but he trusted them and he used them to change the world. And if you're in a season of plenty right now, if you're in a season of abundance, maybe it's all sunshine. This is your chance to prepare, not out of fear. I'm not trying to scare anyone. This isn't out of fear. This is out of faith. Saving now creates margin to handle life's challenges, to embrace God's plans without feeling overwhelmed. And so I want to give all of us 3 easy practices you can do today to start preparing for what might be ahead, to start preparing for tomorrow. The first thing, if you're building a savings, if you're thinking about savings, even if you have a savings, just name your funds. Name your funds, name your savings funds. Saving doesn't have to feel so generic or impersonal. Instead of just this single savings account, like create specific categories that make it fun. If you need an emergency fund, create an emergency fund account. And create a future dreams fund. Create a generosity to others fund. Whatever God's putting on your heart, whatever you're looking forward to, maybe the purpose over your life that you're trying to walk towards. But naming your savings funds, it not only makes it personal and purposeful, but it turns it from an obligation into an act of trust. Because each category becomes a tangible reminder that we're not just storing up money, we're preparing for the plans that God has for us. Another thing we can do is we can focus on the next season. Just take a moment and just start thinking about what's around the corner, what's ahead. What's ahead in this next year? What holidays, school expenses, vacations, what family trips? Maybe it's the potential of 3 weddings because God blessed you with 3 daughters, all girls, so now you have that to look forward to in the future, but hope that's way down the road. Start setting aside small amounts now for these predictable costs and do it so they don't become financial surprises later. Saving for the next season, it isn't just practical, it's a way of trusting that God will provide for your needs while you plan with wisdom. But by preparing in advance, you're creating peace for the future. You're aligning your resources with God's purpose over your life. And then the last thing we can do here is prepare for opportunities, not just problems. That's how we look ahead. Saving isn't just about responding to a crisis in our life. It's also about being ready to say yes when God opens a door. This could be helping a friend. This could be stepping into a new opportunity. Having resources ready allows us to respond in faith. All of this isn't worrying about the future. This is wisely preparing for it. What I'm trying to say is that stewarding what God has given you today creates peace and purpose for tomorrow. So remember, the same God that was with Joseph in the good years was with him in the famine as well. And whether you're in a season of plenty or you're in a season of struggle, remember God is faithful. His timing is perfect, and he will give you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. So don't just live for today, live and think about tomorrow. Seasons will change, but with God, you can face whatever comes your way with hope and with confidence. Joseph's story reminds us the importance of anticipating what's ahead, of saving for the unexpected. But saving isn't just about recognizing the need to save. we also have to save with a clear strategy. And that brings up the second point that Joseph's story modeled, and that is to save with a plan. A couple years ago, I came home from I came home from the gym at the time, and I was walking. I wasn't trying to like flex on that. Like I came home from the gym. I came home from the gym and I was walking up to the front door when I ran into what can only be described as a cardboard Mount Everest. Like it was just this pile, this mountain of Amazon packages. And I was stressed. Like I walk up, my stomach like dropped. I'm looking at this completely scared. I have a picture of me walking up to these packages. It looks like the Amazon driver gave up on the rest of the neighborhood, just dropped everything on our porch. I'm thinking, what did my wife Laura do? Like, what did she do here? We had just created a budget, and I can promise you on the Amazon line item, there was not that much money to cover that amount of packages. Well, not just a few seconds later, my daughters, my wife, they jump out the front door screaming, "April Fools!" If you don't know my wife, she loves April Fools. It is her favorite holiday, which I don't even know if you can call it a holiday, and that is really sick that is her favorite day, a day where you get to prank people and trick them. And the prank here was that all those boxes on the porch, they were all empty. It turns out every time we got an Amazon delivery, she secretly stashed these empty boxes in the garage. And she had been saving boxes since January. How messed up is that? That in January, she was already thinking about how she was gonna prank me. She made me think she had single-handedly given our whole life savings over to Jeff Bezos, and it worked. It was brilliant. Now, I know April 1st is right around the corner. She's probably already planning of how she's gonna torture me this year, and I'm already putting ideas in her head. But just like Laura's prank, just like it required careful planning, a strategy, my point here is that saving with intention, what it does is it allows us to partner with God in stewarding what he's given us. In our story with Joseph didn't just warn Pharaoh that there was gonna be a famine. He also helped him out. He gave him a detailed strategy, and it's amazing how perfectly this plan played out. Look at verses 47 through 49. He gives us his strategy here. It says, as predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. Bumper crops are basically like an abnormally large amount of crops. And during those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grain, like sand on the seashore. And finally, he stopped keeping what? He stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. Now, I know it says that Joseph stopped keeping records, but to stop keeping records meant that he was keeping records, which means that Joseph didn't save randomly. He saved with intention. Tells us every city had its own storehouse. It was all placed strategically near the fields where the grain was grown. And he didn't just collect a little here and there. He had a system. He had a plan. He wanted to make sure that Egypt was going to be able to weather that famine. And while saving for what's coming is all about a mindset, saving with a plan is all about taking action. Joseph didn't just say, let's save some grain whenever it feels like we have a little left over. Does anybody else do this at the beginning of the month? Like, if I have some left over this month, well, then I'll save. He developed a structured, intentional system, a system that made saving consistent and effective. You see, a good plan transforms vague intentions into practical steps. Now, I am not a financial expert. I'm not claiming to be able to help you handle your own finances. I know it's all very personal, and there's a lot of different strategies out there. There's a lot of different ways that you can get help in planning for your finances. But what I am trying to do today is to contextualize what the Bible is teaching us and bring it into some ways that we can start saving today. And here's just some ideas to help you do that, to build your own savings plan. The very first way is just to track your spending. Track your spending. Pastor Judd talked about this last week. If you missed that message, go back, watch it. It's a great one. But Joseph knew exactly where the grain was coming from and exactly where it was stored. Do we know where our money goes each month? If we don't, we should use things like a budgeting app, a spreadsheet, whatever works for us. But once you know where your money is going, well, then you can decide where it should go. The second thing we can do is we can set it and forget it. Like automate your savings. There's ways that you can set up automatic transfers to move a percentage of your paycheck into savings before you even see it. So you're not even tempted to use it. Or just treat saving like it's this non-negotiable bill, like just that has to be paid every month, and pay it at the first of the month. But just stay consistent. Even when life gets busy, just keep saving. Number 3, embrace progress over perfection. Saving doesn't have to be big amounts. Maybe it's $10 a week. Maybe it's $50 a month. The key isn't the amount. The key is that you're creating a habit. And small, consistent steps over time are gonna lead to big breakthroughs. Then number 4, define your goals. Don't just save aimlessly. We just mentioned how you can name your savings fund. Well, once you have it named, start giving it a goal amount. If you want an emergency fund, name that goal. Is it $1,000? $1,000 an emergency fund. Is it a future dreams fund? Name that goal. What do you need in that fund to achieve or to obtain your future dreams? If it's a 3 daughters weddings fund, well, just write in the goal amount, good luck, get a second job, a third job. You might not ever get there, but try. Writing down your goals and assigning amounts to them make it personal, it makes it purposeful. And then number 5, evaluate and adjust. Joseph's supervisors, we see in that story, they didn't just store blindly. They consistently assessed their progress. They adjusted as needed. So every few months, we should be checking in on our plan. Are we on track? Do we need to make any changes? And here's why this matters, is that without a plan, money has a way of disappearing on us. And if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. I'm trying to think about the amount of times that I've gotten to the end of a month and I just thought, where did it all go? Where did it all go? I don't even understand it. A plan brings clarity. It puts you in control and it gives you the freedom to focus on what really matters. We see in this story that Joseph, he didn't wait for the famine to arrive to figure things out. He acted during the years of abundance. He had a clear vision of what was ahead. And for us, having a plan isn't about being responsible, just about being responsible. It's about being ready and faithful stewards of what God has given us. So ask yourself, do I have a plan? If you have a plan, then assess, does it align with my goals, my dreams, the purpose God's putting over my life? If you don't have a plan, then ask yourself, what's one small step that you can take today to start working and saving with intention? My friend Doug, who is also a mentor of mine, he gave me this advice. He said, if you work the plan will work. And Doug is absolutely correct. That's good advice. But to further that point, when God is in the plan, it's not just about making it work. It's about making it count, to count for something greater. So trust him. And I promise you, he will take your faithfulness further than you ever could on your own. Saving with a plan, it doesn't just set us up for financial peace. It positions us to live out God's calling. It's not just about being ready for the unexpected. It's about also being ready for opportunities, which leads us to the last way that we can lean into Joseph's wisdom from this story when it comes to saving, and that is to save to make an impact. Save to make an impact. Let's look at what happened in Genesis 41:57. Look at what it says, wraps up this story. It says, and people came from where? All around. People came from all around Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. Joseph's obedience, it didn't just save his own life. It didn't just save Pharaoh and the palace and people of power's lives. It didn't even just save the lives of the Egyptians. It saved the lives of nations that were surrounding Egypt. It went far beyond Egypt's borders. Joseph's story shows us how saving isn't just about meeting our own needs, it's also being in a position to bless others, to be a blessing. This story, this principle reminds me of a recent news story I just watched. This story was about these first responders fighting this devastating wildfire in the LA County. And in the middle of all the chaos, the destruction. One team of firefighters went out of their way to help a family preserve their family heirlooms, to preserve some photos. These were items that were truly irreplaceable. I mean, in the middle of an active fire, they carefully carried out boxes of memories out of this burning house. And when a reporter asked one of the firefighters why they were doing that, what they were doing, what these efforts were for, this firefighter gave this really simple response. He responded to the reporter. He said, "We're just trying to save some photos." Not exactly a quote that you could tweet about. It's not a powerful quote, but it is a powerful act. Those firefighters, they prioritized what mattered most. Houses, possessions, all of that can be rebuilt. All of that can be replaced. But the memories, the legacies captured in those photos, those were irreplaceable. And in the same way, our approach to saving should reflect this same mindset, because saving isn't just about creating some sort of financial security. It's about positioning ourselves to make a difference, to focus on what matters most. When we save intentionally, we're prepared to respond to needs. We're prepared to support our communities. We're prepared to respond and advance to whatever God puts on our lives, to respond to advancing his kingdom. I want you to look at 2 Corinthians 9:8 real quick. We're almost done, but this verse encapsulates what I'm trying to say. It says, "And God will generously provide all you need. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to" what? Share. Plenty left over to share with others. When we save wisely, we're not just meeting our own needs. We're creating opportunities. We're creating opportunities to reflect God's blessing with others, whether it's helping someone in a crisis, could be giving to a cause that matters. It could be simply just trying to say yes to whatever God puts over our life. But saving with a purpose allows us to be instruments of his grace. Joseph's savings plan, it wasn't about just retiring on some tropical island with enough grain to get him by the rest of his life so he didn't have to work again. His foresight, his obedience, it saved his own family. It preserved the future of an entire nation. I want to wrap up sharing one of my favorite Bible verses, and it comes right after this story because it kind of encapsulates Joseph's whole story. It kind of finishes his whole story. Joseph says this to his brothers in Genesis 45, 5-7. These are the same brothers that sold him into captivity early in his story. He finally gets a chance to see them again after Egypt had survived this famine. And he says to his brothers, "But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors." Joseph's wise management and saving, it didn't just impact Egypt, it changed the course of history. And when we handle our resources thoughtfully, we're in the position to do the same. Saving isn't just about stockpiling out of fear. What it's about is trusting God's provision and using what he's given us to bless others. Even Joseph's own story, it isn't just about wise resource management. It's about faith. It's about trust in the God who provides. Through every season of Joseph's life, from the pit to the palace, God was with him. He was guiding him. He was working out his greater plan in Joseph. And the same God who was faithful to Joseph is also faithful to us. He is with you, church. For some of you, the greatest fresh start that you can experience today, it isn't just financial peace. I believe it's something so much more. The greatest fresh start that you can experience is just realizing that you have a chance for a fresh start, for a new beginning. You have a fresh start and God completely forgiving you your mistakes, completely forgetting your past, not just forgetting it, but using your past for your future.